what's the word? It's a separated process. You send a letter, you don't pick up the phone and have a conversation with someone about your requests. You don't get to explain it. They read what you write. In 20 days, they send you what you asked for, and there isn't like a back and forth, like, oh, can I have this now? Can I have that now? So getting the words right is really important, and that goes back to the language. So if I had asked for data on undergraduate students and their definition of what an undergraduate student was different than mine, they would have sent me whatever they thought I meant. And for one thing, I might not know exactly what they sent me. They just send you the numbers. So this kind of goes back to another resource is make sure that if you're making data requests or if you're filling out IRBs for other countries, that people from those contexts read them first to make sure, okay, if I'm the United Kingdom and I'm at a university and I'm reading your request, here's what I think you need. Is that what you want? Yes or no? That's really important to get the language right of the context. And then the other resource that I'll mention is a course. Pauline and I both took a course in the HALE program, EAD 863, which is all about comparative higher education. So in that course we learned how to compare country context. And much of my work happened in the context of that course. This was a project that I had started before the course happened, but then it fit into this course, and through working with my professor, we kind of made it happen. So using courses and course time to complete these projects is, I recommend. It is completely possible to complete, maybe not one of these kinds of studies, not one of these, like going to a foreign country to conduct interviews, but it is possible to collect data from another country, to do analysis on it within one semester, and to end that semester with at least a conference-capable paper. So I really encourage you to try that. It takes a little bit of ingenuity. Sometimes it takes a little bit of flexibility on the part of your professor to say, here's your final paper outline. I want to do this one extra little thing with it to make it publishable or to make it presentable. And you can work those things out and really use your course and your course professor and the students in your course as a resource on your projects.
So think about what courses can mean beyond just I'm doing an assignment for this course so I can get it done. That's really some really good tips. Other useful resources and tips that you would share that help you get this going?
I just want to piggyback on what Bradley said because I found it really useful when I was doing my grant writing to use my courses and to work with the professors to have that be my final paper, or if it's something that I'm sharing with my classmates, to use for my Fulbright proposal, I had 15 people read it because that was how the class was set up, and Amy Parks was really, generous in being flexible with me. So yeah, use that support while you have it through courses, and I think faculty it seems like they do want to support you in your individual projects, if it can fit with the course.
Yeah, and going off of that, courses, yes, and also writing groups. There's the global cohort, not global cohort, but global experiences writing group on Fridays. That if you're thinking about doing international work, that's a space where you can share ideas and share writing. So writing groups. What is that writing course? One that you took? No.
The social sciences research seminar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a course on grant writing for the Spencers or the Fulbrights and things like that.
It's not currently offered this year. They hope it was offered last fall when I took it, and maybe next year. It doesn't have a comfortable disciplinary home, so it's in a bunch of, anyway, they have issues with funding, but they hope to offer it.
Yeah, but it's
So
a place
the
to
course to help you apply for funding has
Yeah.
issues with funding? That's what you're saying?
It's specifically for TAs. the way I understand it. They're very, very experienced professors who are both either retired or quasi-retired, so I think that's part of it as well. But it's called ISSR, International Social Science Research. Yeah.
And your papers for that class are your funding applications, and they get workshopped by the other students in the class. And so you're constantly getting feedback, maybe too much feedback is what I've heard from some people, that 15 voices on a single document might be too many.
It does test the power of Google Docs, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a resource that is occasionally offered here. So that's a
Good
big
to
one.
know. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that, so that's a good tip. Other resources, tools?
Sure. So for me, one key resource was my knowledge of my own country, and also having friends and relatives to support me, because when I'm here I don't have an apartment where I stay, so when I go back I have to be hosted by somebody. And also having friends, so even if like you are doing research in a country which is not your own country, you can have maybe friends there and things like that, then they can host you and also make the expenses a little bit lower. And then another resource that I used was a professor who had taught me back home. And so when I'm thinking about this, because she has more experience in education than I do, and she does research on education, so I always like, even up to now, like I've always maintained that contact and always talk to her, this is what I'm thinking, what would you advise, how do you think I could go about it, or how do you think I can make more impact if I maybe looked into that issue. So that has been a helpful contact and resource throughout. And then the other thing that has been helpful is also using the conferences when you go to conferences, because like for last summer I did not go to collect data. I did quantitative data analysis, and so there's some data that I really wanted to use, but it was not possible for me to access that data. And so when I was going to the CIS conference it was in Mexico, so I identified like the people whom I think, somebody whom I had read that he was working in that organization, but he had left. So I went and talked to him, and then I explained myself, and he told, oh, I can help you with the data because it's public resource. I don't know why I've not been able to give it to you. So that is one thing that has been really helpful. And then after that, because these people were from Kenya, so when I went home for a short period over the summer, I visited them in their offices and also talked about other issues, and also because the work that they do, there are things that I'm interested in, and if I can use even their data for my dissertation instead of collecting my own data, and just maybe just do only qualitative part on my case. So I felt like these ones are really good, like conferences are really a nice place to have these contacts, and also after that then do a follow-up, not have the contact and then keep quiet, so that has been really nice.
I think, let me add one tip that I would suggest related to that is alumni. MSU alumni, whether they are from the U.S. or from other countries that are in other places now, because I used to work in admissions and travel abroad to that, and I worked a lot with our alumni groups, and you can actually go on the MSU International Alumni website, and they have a world map, and you can put in the country, and you can see where there are any organized alumni groups. And many of the people involved are from MSU quite a ways back now. They graduated 20, 30 years ago, but have positions in ministries within the government and things like that. So there are people that can connect you, and I used to contact them to connect me in universities and places that I might not know where to get in or how to get in. So, and checking who your department chairs or your advisors might know that is currently in the country of interest for an alumni who's returned. So I would say tapping into the alumni network that exists. And there aren't organized alumni groups for every country, but there are for some. And finding out or talking to one of the area centers here on campus, like Asian Studies or Center for Latin American and Caribbean Research. There are people in there that they know what all the MSU connections are in those countries and which universities they're at, and would gladly sit down and talk with students planning to do research in other contexts. So also the area study centers or the gender center, other places like that, and we'll talk about those and related to funding, but those are also great resources, I think, for many, many things. Yeah.
I'm just going to add one thing. I completely agree with all the networking pieces that everyone said. And I don't think I would have had a project if it wasn't for networking, and it's not something that I always personally feel comfortable doing. but it is, usually people are just so generous with their time. But I was gonna add just one more thing. There's this academic who had written a couple articles, and I was really interested in seeing if I could meet him, and I asked like literally everyone I knew, I think, if they knew who this person was, and I couldn't find a connection. But I looked him up on LinkedIn and sent him a message and said, hey, are you the person who wrote this article? And he got back to me, and we met like the next week. So that was like a cold call kind of situation. He was surprised that I had read his article, and he was happy to talk. So it was outside of my comfort zone to connect with an academic that way, but it actually worked that time.
So trying a lot of different channels of networking, you know, kind of thinking of as many ways as you can to do that. So let's talk now a bit about funding. So first of all, let me send this down. Give you guys interest. Can you send these down around the table there? This is just a simple spreadsheet, and thank you to Laura for getting this started, Laura, here. And I added in some things as well, what we could find. So we'll get this up on our website at some point too, with links to these different things. But just to give you an idea of some of the things we know of externally, university-wide, college-wide, and then on the back, some of the different departments that may specifically have things for those students. Oh, sorry. Well, that didn't work. So we hope this is a living and ongoing document that we can, on the OISE website, and continue to add to. One note at the end there is a person who's a great resource is Brett Say, and Laura will talk more, I think, about her meeting with him in the IRTL office here in the college, who sends out regular updates on various kinds of funding, but actually sitting down with him. So these are some things that we know of now, and I'm trying to keep my eye on what else is out there and keep adding. So you can take that, and we'll send this out in an email so that if you know others who really want this, I will send it on the International Ed listserv, and we'll get it on our website as soon as we can, also in addition to the talk. So, but let me hear from all of you, what kind of funding did you get and if you had attached things together, Laura, I'm sure others of you as well. I only know because I've heard already a lot about Laura's adventures. So tell me about how you funded your projects.
My project was not funding dependent. So I consider my funding to be an award, a scholarship, something that, the dollars didn't literally go to anything related to my research. I thought I could go to some kind of international conference, maybe take my research and present it in the United Kingdom. It never really panned out. But, so the funding that I have is from the Endowed scholarships and fellowships from the College of Education. These are usually one-time, kind of one-off scholarships. Some are larger than others, but they're usually smaller, $1,000, $2,000, something like that. There usually isn't even a requirement that you have to produce a product that you have to then do something with. It's a scholarship. You apply for it. If you get it, you do with it what you can. So they're at the bottom of this sheet, the Endowed scholarships and fellowships. They're pretty much all due, the process starts around February. You turn in your applications, and then you get your funding for the fall.
If you go to the College of Education website, just put Endowed scholarships, it'll pull it up.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can't get the hyperlink off the piece of paper.
So I looked kind of through all of these scholarships, and it seems like the HALE program is one of, I think maybe the only that offers scholarships specifically for international work, and we have two. So I was awarded the Dr. Jacqueline, see if I can get it right, the Jacqueline D. Taylor and Family Research Grant, something like that.
Yeah,
it might be longer than that. Yep, so again, it was just a one-off scholarship, but then we also have the Charity Endowed Scholarship, and both of these are for international higher education work that are only available to HALE students.
And could be, doesn't matter if you're an international student or a U.S. student, it would be available to anyone.
That's right. Now, there was one other program for, it was either all EAD students or some other program that was specifically for international students. So you just have to read the requirements of the endowed scholarships. But there are many that are generic. So you could, just like you have here,
Yeah, the Rotruba, that's an EAD one, but I was talking to the department chair, Marilyn Amy, and she said, well, someone could use it for
Sure.
international work, no one ever has.
Yep.
But, so you can be creative too, so don't ignore things that don't specify, it just, the outcome of it, so it has to be for someone planning to pursue a career in higher education, and it's not for the dissertation, but that could be, that's pretty open.
Right.
So no one has ever used that for an international project.
And there are
But
other
it's
programs
there.
that are restricted to kinesiology students or teacher
Yeah.
ed students, and then others that are not restricted, they're for any graduate students in the College of Ed. Again, you just have to read the requirements. But these just require a short application, a short proposal, a recommendation from your faculty, and then, again, that's it. I think Marilyn Amy asked me to say, like, whatever happened with this? You know, I think maybe I sent like kind of a final report, but that's not, that's not totally the expectation that you did everything you said you were going to do with the application. It's really some money for you to pursue an independent research project, kind of like the summer research fellowship grants, but a little bit smaller, and they kind of happen during the year. So I encourage you to apply for those, just like any other scholarship on campus. There are many available and many people do not apply. And there are scholarships that go unawarded, and there are scholarships where only one person applies to them. So, I applied to 2 that year and I got 1. It's worth putting in your application for these endowed scholarships.
Good, excellent. Lisa, how about your funding?
For language funding, because I did Chichewa tutoring for most of my graduate coursework, and I got that funded through the Ed Policy program, just through their department funds. I think that it looks like most departments have some version of that. So that helped with language training. And I also got a summer FLAS, the Foreign Language Area Studies, which is for U.S. citizens. I think it's restricted to U.S. citizens and permanent residents. That was for language training, and you're not, I think they do restrict you from doing research during the time that you're on the fellowship, but I stayed for a longer period of time because I was already in Malawi and did a short research project during that time. For my dissertation research, I had funding through the Fulbright Doctoral Dissertation Research Abroad, and that funded, living expenses, travel costs. There are restrictions around paying for research assistance or transcription costs, anything like that, as well as purchasing any long-term, any technology that has a life beyond the project. So things like recorders, or I had a foot pedal for transcription that I like to use. So in order to purchase those items, I applied for an EAD small research grant, and that also paid for, I worked with some translators in the field, and then while I was doing my dissertation research, while I was still in Malawi, I had people, a couple different people trying to transcribe my data so that I would come back with most of the data transcribed and translated, and be able to then just jump into analysis. So those, I guess, I've had 4 different funding streams, 2 for language and 2 for the research itself.
And I think both of you, 2 of the things you talked about were for U.S. citizens or
Yeah.
permanent residents. So Fulbright, if you're applying here to go abroad, then you have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. If you're applying for a Fulbright award from another country and you're a citizen there, and then you're coming here, so there are some restrictions on some of these.
Yeah, so for me, I only applied to the summer research fellowships from the College of Education. So for the first year, I applied for the Summer Research Development Fellowship, which is only for first years.
Right.
And when you're writing the proposal, you have to say, it's like for skill development, the skill that you want to develop. So for me, I said I want to develop my qualitative research skills. So though I'd done some research, qualitative research before, but that was like the key thing that made me be able to get the funding. And then for this last summer, I applied for the Summer Research Fellowship, which is for 2nd and 3rd years, if I'm not wrong. And then, yeah, so that's how I got funded. And one thing with these fellowships, I don't know if it is the same for the US students, but for any fellowship you get for international students, it is first taxed.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if it is the same for US.
It's taxed, but they don't do it for us. So
Right, it goes into your
Pay
income.
later,
Yeah.
Yes.
Pay it later.
a lot
Yes,
later.
yeah.
Could be.
Yeah, so for
A lot
us,
too.
A lot
It's
and a
fun.
lot later.
But because of the way
Yes.
the tax laws work, that's true, international
Yeah.
students are taxed up front and they've got part of it chopped off
Mhm. yes, so,
before you ever get the
so
funds.
like for first, instead of getting 5,000, you get like 4,000. Yeah, so it is first taxed before it gets to your bank account. So not to plan for the full amount that is there, but
That's a good
after
tip.
tax.
And I would encourage you as citizens to think of it that way,
Yes.
because you're gonna get the whole chunk. I had a summer research fellowship as well, and they will give you the whole money, but it is not all your money. And so, it's better to think about it the way they do it for international students, and just know, I need to set this percentage aside and not touch it, because that,
And there's supposedly some way where you can pay up front on it, and I thought about that, and there are reasons to do that. And we need better guidance on
Yeah.
that, because my entire refund was wiped out that first
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
because I had these two things in one. So I had I had the first year summer research development thing, and this little scholarship on top, and those two non-taxed upfront scholarships just wiped. You had that money that was cash in my pocket during that year, but then you expect your tax refund and it's just gone. So.
Well, and the thing with that is to remember that research expenses can be written off on your taxes. So I save all my receipts when I'm in Korea because I get to do the conversions, and I have to sit there and do the conversion for the day that receipt was.
Right.
The day I bought that bus ticket, I have to look up the money conversion for that day, but I just keep a log of it. I can tax deduct all of those expenses, and airline tickets.
So you may want a good tax person who
Yeah.
is familiar with
I
all
pay a
this.
little bit more to get my taxes done, but I save every receipt, and I can write most of them off when it comes time. So then I get a little bit of refund.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but I get a little bit back.
So some of these
If I
are
can
really
show
good
how I'm
tips.
spending the money. Right, show that you're using the money they've given you to do research, to actually do the research, and then you can take them off.
Okay, so you gotta think about taxes either way if you're doing international research or getting fellowships, period. Rachel, any, your funding? Is your
so I had
funding
the
situation?
SRF through I had the SRF, the Summer Research Fellowship through the College of Ed, and then I've also had FLAS funding, which Alyssa mentioned, which is for language and is unfortunately just for US citizens and permanent residents. Yeah, and so the other thing I would mention in terms of, for people who are using the funding to physically change locations, I have an apartment here in Lansing, and I was moving from one place to another in Lansing, and then I also needed a place to live in Dakar. And so I had to plan very carefully, because I knew I was gonna have to pay rent in 2 places, but because I was moving, there was a chance I'd have to pay rent in 3 places, which is ridiculous. But anyway, that worked out. But just, part of, this funding is for research, but if you have a life that is here in the Lansing area, and like me, you have monthly rent, that's another thing you have to plan for, which isn't really research related, but it is life related, and you are a person, so.
Yeah, not everybody's in a position they can store all their stuff for the summer, and so you have to factor all of that in too, so. And also, just another thing to mention is conference funding, and that's listed on here as well, because you can get funding through international studies and programs along with the graduate school, like one time in your career. So if you go to a conference that's out of the country and you use that time as your time for the graduate school, first of all, it'll be a little bit more, and then they also pass it on to international studies and programs who will tack on some additional money. I used that when I had a conference in Vancouver, so think about where you're presenting the research and when to most effectively use your one time to get those kinds of awards. And then COGS too, yeah.
Is that only when you are presenting, or is it also possible to go as an attendee with
I
those
think,
funds?
I think it's usually presenting.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I've done both. The graduate school's travel grant that's on the first page, that 300 for domestic, 600 for international, that's to present at a conference. But if 2 lines above, the professional development award is a very undefined award in that they say professional development, but nobody says what that means. I have used that, or I am using that this year to go to a conference and to do one of their special event type things where you have to register and pay extra to meet with a scholar and work one-on-one, or like in small groups. I'm using that to go to a conference where I'm not presenting. But I've been able to make a case that I really need to go to this special event that costs more than just the conference costs. And so then I was able to get that money.
I know when I got that, the graduate school one, not the COGS, but I was presenting, but it wasn't a research-based presentation. It was just presenting, so it might not have to be always research-focused, but you know, you want to think about when is the most effective time to apply for this if you get it one time as a PhD student, and where you can get the most, bang for your buck. But there are, and then departments here in the college award conference funding in different ways.
So going down this list, my dissertation has been incredibly expensive because I am running back and forth throughout 2 years. And so I have pieced my dissertation together using a lot of these that are on here. The Summer Renewable Research Fellowship is where it all got started. I had that for summer of year 2 and summer of year 3. And that buys your time, and so I was able to use that for rent and things like that, airline tickets, yeah.
And can you clarify the pre-dissertation? Like, how does that work if you collect something that becomes your dissertation,
Right.
but it's not
And
proposed
when I wrote that
way?
proposal in year 2, I did not realize that this was my dissertation. I thought it was my practicum, and then that was it. But now in my 4th year, I could not apply this November and propose it as a non-dissertation project because it is my dissertation. So I cannot apply this year for the Summer Renewable Fellowship because I am at dissertation stage. But if you're working on a practicum, or if you're working on just like depending on what program you're in, a different research project that's not officially dissertation, you can apply for it. Yeah. And then in site, for site people, the Site Research Enhancement Fellowship is, I'm guessing, very similar to the EAD one. That's a godsend because that 4,000 maximum could be travel money, could be transcription money, could be incentives for your participants. It can be, I've used it for hotel expenses, and when I'm like wandering through Korea, going to 10 schools in 10 days, and I have to stay in 10 different hostels or hotels, they cover that. And so that one you can request up to 4,000, and then they'll give you whatever they can.
Is that annually or is
That's
it
annually.
one-time?
I can
Wow.
apply for that every single year, and I have applied for that every single year for different things. So this year I'm applying for transcription costs because now I have all this data and I need to spend some time or pay someone to transcribe it.
Supposedly, from the conversations I had, there are some kind of small research grant funds, should be in all, it's a college thing, but they're advertised and applied for maybe differently in each department. So it may be department specific on how many times you could get that and whether it could be used dissertation or not. I had an EAD small research grant and actually used it for my dissertation because I hadn't gotten it before. It was a one-time thing, so it may vary from department to department. So it's worth talking to people in your department to check out when it can be used, how often. So apply, right?
And then
Yeah.
my other recommendation is look at the professional associations that you're a member of. For example, I'm a member of TESOL. TESOL has done multiple calls for grants. Some are specific to grad students. Some are mini grants that if you just need $1,000, apply for it and say how you're going to use that money. AERA has some, and I'm guessing every association has something. So look into those, and some of them you don't have to be a member of to apply for, but most, I think, assume that you are a member.
And some may not have research grants like NAVSA, which is the International Educators that I belong to. They don't have research funds, because it's really not a research conference, but the regional groups of that association sometimes advertise conference travel funds for someone who's new to the field or new to the conference, and that would apply to a graduate student. They might fund more than one person, so that would be, more regionally based, but still good for networking and all of that. So, yeah, so you got to cover a lot of different bases to patch it together, but there's more out there than you think. And Bradley said that there are some of these endowed things that might just sit there and not get used in ways they could be, or hardly anyone applies. That's kind of sad. So, go get the money. All right, what about, let me ask you, what was the final project of your research? So if you got these funds and you did a particular project, there was an outcome to it already, what was that? And if it's ongoing, or maybe have resulted in several projects along the way, or several outcomes, things you wrote or presented. So maybe talk a little bit about some of the outcomes.
So my paper was a final paper for the class, so it served the purpose of the class project. And then with a little more work, it became a roundtable presentation at a conference. And then with a lot more work, it's a published paper in an international higher education journal. So it is possible to turn these, a small project like mine with publicly available data into something publishable and presentable. And it has, as far as my network, increased my network, because I through this project became connected to people in the United Kingdom doing similar policy work. A lot of connections through Twitter, and so and it exposed me to international journals. I think we get stuck reading our country context-specific journals, especially in policy, because U.S. policy is different than other country policies. So if you're trying to specialize in policy, you usually stick to one country. But I learned in trying to find a home for my paper that there are journals that specialize in comparative work. You could be comparing two of anything. It could be two countries, it could be two things within a country, it could be two policies, it could be whatever. So there's journals that specialize in comparison. And then of course there are journals that are country specific, but in the country where you are trying to publish, or that your paper's about, that probably wouldn't normally be on your radar. And then there are international journals housed in other countries that like to publish things about places all over the place. So it really kind of broadened my perspective on the types of journals out there. And something that I learned is that international journals, I don't know if you ever go on to Google Scholar Metrics, which is Google Scholar's ranking of journals. International journals tend to creep into the top 20, probably because their reach is so far. So when you are thinking about like the top journals in your field, maybe in one country context, you might have your top 5 or whatever, but other journals' influences from the international kind of